And welcome back to EH Deck Building. I'm your host, Demo, and this is Brewing with Underwhelming Commanders, Episode 3. And coming in at number 3 this week is Gallia of the Endless Dance, a red and a green legendary creature. Satyr has haste. It's a 2/2. Other satyrs you control get +1/+1 and have haste. Whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures, you may discard a card at random. If you do, draw 2 cards. So right away, obviously, you're thinking it's a satyr tribal deck. And giving +1/+1 and haste is definitely worth a build around there for satyrs. So I definitely would put a few satyrs in this deck. However, there just isn't very many good ones. Irreverent Revelers and Reckless Reveler. For some reason, satyrs like to destroy artifacts. I don't know why. So there is, we're going to put them into play. We can swing with them. We do want to attack with several creatures so we can get that other trigger. You can also use them to destroy artifacts. Voyaging Satyr's pretty good because it's going to have haste, so we can immediately play it and then use it to untap a land. Boon Satyr, it's got Bestow, right? It's got Flash. It's a 4/2, so it's going to be a 5/3 with haste. That's pretty decent. We can also bestow it, obviously, pay 3 green, and make one of our other creatures have +4/+2. Careless Celebrant's pretty good. Whenever it dies, it deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. Revel of the Fallen God. It's 7 mana, 3, 2 red, and 2 green. Put 4 2/2 red and green satyr creature tokens with haste onto the battlefield. So with our commander, these are going to be 3/3s. So it's going to be 4 3/3s for 7 mana. I guess that's pretty good. So I think that could probably go in the deck. And then if you got the money, Willow Satyr, I talked about this in one of my last 10 cards videos. It's like a $200 card, but it is a satyr, and giving it haste is really important because you tap it to gain control of target legendary creature for as long as you control Willow Satyr, and it remains tapped. And of course, in a commander game, that's fantastic, being able to gain control of someone's commander, right? But if you really badly want to make a Gallia deck, this is a huge improvement in the deck if you want to do that. But like I said, I don't think there's enough satyrs to actually make a deck around. So a few other things we can do. Changelings, obviously. Chameleon Colossus and Litjara Glade Warden, I think both work in the deck. Just good cards. They have Changeling, which means they are satyrs, which means they're going to get +1/+1 and have haste. Masked Vandal and Taurine Mauler, both cards that I think you could put in almost any deck. They're fantastic cards, but are also going to get that +1/+1 and have haste. And then I think we can probably throw Birthing Boughs in here and Maskwood Nexus. Both of these are going to make shapeshifter tokens with Changeling. So basically we can just, with Birthing Boughs, pay 4 mana and crank out a 2/2 token that's going to get +1/+1 and have haste, so we can make it and immediately throw it at our opponents. Maskwood Nexus, same thing, has that ability to make Changeling tokens. Also has the ability to make all of our creatures Changeling so that they can then take advantage of that ability of our commander. I really like the second ability more of Gallia. That's the ability that I probably would more so build around. So Conspiracy Theorist and Surly Badgesaur are going to let us take advantage of the discarding that we're doing, right? Anything we discard, we're going to get an advantage out of it with Surly Badgesaur. Conspiracy Theorist, I really like because, again, the random discard is the part that really is sort of a bit of a turnoff for me with Gallia, because I don't want to throw away something that I actually really want in my hand. And if we happen to do that, Conspiracy Theorist will let us cast it from exile. And then why not go with Madness? I thought, if we're doing a sort of a discard theme, Anjay's Ravager, Stromkirk, Occultist, both work. Ideally, what I think I would want to do with this deck, I probably would go mostly a Madness theme with this deck. And what I would do is maybe get down to 1 card in my hands. Because if you have 1 card in your hand, and the only card in your hand is that Madness card, then you know what you're going to be discarding, right? You discard a card at random, you only have 1, so it's going to be one of these cards, and then you're going to have the mana up so that you know you can cast it. So I would sort of plan around that random discard thing. Fiery Temper and Violent Eruption are 2 more really good ones. The cost is reduced. That's really what you want with Madness, is to have that cost reduced with the Madness, so that you can get it out even cheaper. And again, I just want to guarantee that we're discarding the Madness card, so I get down to 1 card in hand, then I attack, I cast my Madness card, draw 2 cards, and then I can do more stuff on my second main phase. Also, we are attacking lots, so Grand Warlord Rata and Druid's Repository are both great. Both going to give us extra mana. Toski and Orin Frostfang. We're going to be attacking. We're going to be connecting. We need to be drawing cards. We need to be taking advantage of that as well. And also we're going to be drawing extra cards every turn. So Ironcrag Pyromancer and Joel Rael I think are great. Ironcrag Pyromancer is just going to give us 3 damage to throw around every turn. That's pretty fantastic. And Joel Rael is going to give us a 2/2 green cat creature token, which is just another attacker, right? We don't need satyrs in order to fire off Gallia's second ability. We just need any creature that can attack. And these are creatures that we can swing with. So that's going to be good in the deck as well. But moving on to the second place commander, which is Mannichi, the Fevered Dream. And man, you guys are really challenging me here. These are some tough ones. I don't really think about it when I make the polls. I just throw, suggestions that people have made. I throw them up there. And I'm just wondering, I'm starting to wonder how much of this is people are voting for the one that they actually want to make a deck with, or maybe it's a commander that people are like, let's see what he can do with this, because it's a difficult one. Mannichi is definitely a difficult one. I actually thought it was going to win. So I went ahead and made the deck because I thought for sure it was going to win. It was way ahead. And I was kind of interested to see what I could do with it. So I did actually make a deck with this as well. And then it ended up not winning. But I made the deck, so I might as well throw the deck list in the description as well if anyone's interested. So it's a very interesting commander, right? 2 in a red, legendary creature spirit, 1/2, and you can pay 1 in a red, switch each creature's power and toughness until end of turn. Right, so each creature, every single creature in play. And I was trying my hardest to find ways that we could hurt our opponent's creatures with this, right? I think probably the most obvious way to go with this is we switch our own creature's power and toughness so that we get a creature with a big toughness that then becomes a big power and we can swing with it. I wanted to do more let's hurt our opponent's creatures. There really isn't any, at least not in mono red. Belby's Armor is the only one I could find. 3 mana artifact, and you pay X and tap, target creature gets -X plus X until end of turn. So what we can do is give one of our opponent's creatures, we can use this on ourselves too, but I would use this more for removal. So say our opponent has a 2/2 creature. We can give that creature -2 plus 2, so now it becomes an 0/4, and then we use Mannichi's ability and swap the power and toughness, and it kills it, right? So that's kind of what I wanted to go for with this, but that was the only card I found that really worked. Aligned Hedron Network, I think, works good in this deck because we have a bunch of creatures with small power and maybe big toughness. Aligned Hedron Network hates on creatures with big power. So this is not going to hurt any of our creatures. Probably is going to hurt a lot of our opponent's creatures. We even can manipulate it if we want. If our opponents do have some creatures with big butts, we could use Mannichi's ability, swap it, and then cast Aligned Hedron Network. We're going to be making the power of our creatures big, though. That's probably the biggest part of this deck is you're going to be swapping your creatures' power and toughness so they become formidable attackers. So I thought giving our creatures Double Strike is good, Blood Mist, and Berserker's Onslaught. Both of these, we can target one of our creatures with Blood Mist or all of our attacking creatures with Berserker's Onslaught. Going to give them Double Strike. It's particularly important. Double Strike and First Strike are important because our creatures are going to have a huge power and a small toughness once we swap them. So they're going to die easily if they don't have First Strike, right? I also threw Bloodmark Mentor and Akroma's Memorial in here. Bloodmark Mentor is just going to give all of our creatures First Strike, right? Gives all your red creatures First Strike, I guess. We do have a couple artifact creatures in this deck that won't be affected by this, but most of our creatures will get it. And Akroma's Memorial, just a great card. Really, you could probably go in just about any deck where you're attacking, but it gives that First Strike, also Trample, which is really good. Some of the equipment shields like Cathar's Shield and Accorder's Shield are going to give our creatures, again, sort of a big butt. The +0/+3 is essentially going to turn into a +3/+0, right? So I got a few of those in there. Break Through the Line and Goblin Tunneler, stuff like that where we can make creatures with power 2 or less unblockable. And what we can do is we can swing, then we can swap after they've already attacked and after they've already been made unblockable. Then we use Mannichi's ability and swap out the power and toughness. But whose power and toughness are we swapping, right? We need some creatures here. I thought Arnie Brokenbrow was a great fit in this deck. You may pay 1 when he attacks and change Arnie Brokenbrow's base power to 1 plus the greatest power among other creatures you control. We have a lot of creatures that all of a sudden are going to have a huge power, right? So if our Dancing Scimitar's out there and we swap its power and then we attack with with Arnie, we can pay 1, and now Arnie's power is going to be at 5+1, right? So I think that works as well. Granite Gargoyle and Adhikar Sentinel. These are guys that we can just make their toughness bigger and bigger. 1 mana, right? 1 red mana or 1 colorless mana. We can just pump them up, 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 and then swap right after we do the pumping. I thought Dreadhorde Arcanist and Ifrit Flame Painter both fit in the deck too as well. Dreadhorde Arcanist, he cares about having a bigger power, so we can just swap out his power. And now when he attacks, we can cast an instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost 3 or less from our graveyard rather than just 1. And Ifrit Flame Painter, it's got double strike already, so having a 4/1 with double strike seems pretty good, and that ability is pretty fantastic as well. Prophetic Flame Speaker and Erratic Cyclops I also threw in here. Prophetic Flame Speaker, again, just a great creature. If you swap its power and toughness, it's now a 3/1 with double strike and trample, and then also when it connects, you exile a top card of your library, and because it has double strike, you could end up exiling 2 cards with it, so it works great in the deck. Erratic Cyclops is an 0/8 with trample, right? 4 mana, 3 and a red, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, it gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the spell's converted mana cost. So we don't want to switch right away, or else it'll be an 8/0 and it'll die. We want to cast something, anything, right? We just cast a lightning bolt, and then our Erratic Cyclops will be a 1/8, and then we swap, and now it's an 8/1 trampler. So I think that works as well. So that is pretty much it for Mannichi. Like I said, I have a deck list. I went ahead and made the deck I was a little hasty on that one. And that's just sort of what happens with me. I start brewing ideas, and then next thing I know, I have a complete deck. So that deck list is in the description, as well as the winner, which is Aphemia. And again, I was like, man, these guys are really trying to challenge me. But this one actually wasn't that difficult. I thought it would be really hard, and it really wasn't. This is actually a pretty easy build around. And all I did, if you watched my real-time deck building video, right, I just go to gather and I just kind of punch in keywords. And all I did was I looked up black enchantments that said sacrifice on them, okay? And what I was looking for was enchantments that both sacrifice themselves so we can put them in our graveyard, but then also we're going to be making tokens, so maybe we want to sacrifice stuff too. And man, I found a ton. So Seal of Doom and Grave Peril, right? These are both great enchantments that we can sacrifice and they'll go to our graveyard. They kill creatures, which is good. No Rest for the Wicked and Deadly Designs are both great ones, right? No Rest for the Wicked. We can sacrifice it to get any creature, maybe our commander that dies, we can get it back. Deadly Designs is a pretty interesting one. Any player may put plot counters on it, and when there are 5 or more plot counters on it, you sacrifice it and you destroy up to 2 target creatures. You really do want as many enchantments filling your graveyard as you can. I realized, I play tested this deck a bit, and you want lots of enchantments in your graveyard all the time because you're exiling one every single turn and making a zombie token, right? So you got to make sure you do have a lot of these enchantments that sacrifice themselves. Sagas obviously work fantastic. Timerat Calls the Dead and Phyrexian Scriptures work really well. Timerat is also working with our zombie theme as well, right? This is a 2-part zombie theme and also a enchantment theme, right? We're doing both, and that fits in both. Phyrexian Scriptures, I really like this card. It's almost sort of like a Dune Blast in a way, where you can turn your commander into an artifact and then destroy each other creature except for your commander, right? The Eldest Reborn and Elspeth's Nightmare, also just really great sagas that work with the deck, and they're going to eventually sacrifice themselves. Once they've run through their course, they'll go to the graveyard and we can use them. I also have Measure of Wickedness in the deck. This is very interesting. At the end of your turn, sacrifice Measure of Wickedness and you lose 8 life. Whenever another card is put into your graveyard from anywhere, target opponent gains control of Measure of Wickedness. Just a fun card to put in a game. It's an enchantment that's definitely going to end up in your graveyard at some point. Interesting fit in the deck. I also put Koskin Falls in here, right? We're gonna always have creatures. And again, our commander, this is what I said about Koskin Falls in one of my 10 cards video. If you have a black deck and you have a commander that you don't ever want to be attacking or anything with, you're just using its static abilities, Koskin Falls work great because we can just tap down our commander with this. We don't care. We're not going to attack or block with it anyway. And creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each creature, right? It's a ghostly prison, essentially. And also, if we want, we can just let it get sacrificed, right? If we don't tap an untapped creature we control, we can just let it go to our graveyard and use it to turn into a zombie. Also put Dystopia and Torok's Chant in here. There's some pretty nasty black enchantments out there that really hate on people. Contamination comes to mind. There's some pretty brutal ones. These ones, though, I kept the really brutal ones out, and I just kept with the ones that I thought would work really good. Dystopia, man, like I said, I play tested this deck a few times, and the guys I was playing against, every single one of them had a either green or white deck. So it's one black enchantment, cumulative upkeep, pay 1 life. And again, because of the cumulative upkeep, we can just let it die. Whenever we feel like it, we can just let this go to the graveyard, right? If we don't want to pay the life anymore, or if we want an enchantment in our graveyard that we can exile to make a zombie. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a white or green permanent. Oof. That is brutal for white and green decks, and we don't have any, so we don't have to worry about that. Torix Chant, same thing. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Torix Chant unless you pay 1 black. So we can just not pay if we want an enchantment in our graveyard, right? Or if we're playing against a bunch of green decks, we can leave it in play because whenever a player puts a forest onto the battlefield, Torix Chant deals 3 damage to them unless they put a -1/-1 counter on a creature they control. So that's pretty good. Some of the other enchantments, though, that work really good in the deck, again, with the sacrificing, attrition, and Mind Slash, both great cards. Again, cards that I used to see in Commander a lot back in the day and not so much anymore, right? Now we can use those zombie tokens rather than just maybe we'll attack with them, which we will be doing. I think we probably win with this deck just by attacking with our zombie army, but we can also sacrifice a zombie token to destroy a non-black creature. We can sacrifice one to look at target opponent's hand and choose a card that they have to discard. I also put Hecatomb in this deck. I thought this was a great inclusion. Again, it's fitting the enchantment theme. Also, when Hecatomb enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless you sacrifice 4 creatures you control. So we can, if we want, just play Hecatomb and let it sacrifice to itself. And that is a way to put an enchantment in the graveyard. But what I think we can probably pay that cost. We're going to have lots of zombie tokens. We sacrifice 4 of our zombie tokens, and then it turns all of our swamps into pingers. And yes, we'll have Urborg in this deck. This can get really out of hand fast. It's a fantastic card. I also threw Infernal Tribute in here. It's a black enchantment, and we can pay 2 and sacrifice a non-token permanent, draw card. Now, I know people say, oh, well, you can't sacrifice your token zombies to this. We don't want to, though, right? What we want to sacrifice is our enchantments. Any of our other enchantments, we can sacrifice to this. We can even sacrifice Infernal Tribute to itself to draw a card. It just, again, ensures we have those enchantments in our graveyard. Liliana's Mastery and Endless Ranks of the Dead, again, just great enchantments that fit the zombie theme, right? They're going to be giving us more zombie tokens. Liliana's Mastery is going to give us an anthem, so I think that fits really well in the deck. And why not do some spoilers here as well? Urza's Saga, one of the new cards from Modern Horizons that I'm sure everyone's been talking about. This fits in the deck, right? It is an enchantment land. If you haven't seen it yet, I'm sure a lot of people have been buzzing about it. Of course, the first enchantment land ever in the game, but it is a land, so it counts as your land drop. And when I first looked at this, I was like, man, this thing's just free? That's insane. But it counts as your land drop. So if you play it, it counts for your land drop for the turn, and then it's going to go to the first step there where it turns into basically a colorless land, which, whatever, it's your land drop for the turn, and you just play it like you normally would play a land. Then the second ability, Urza Saga, gains pay 2, create an 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token. With this, creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. That's not great. We don't have a ton of artifacts in this deck. It's probably just going to be a 1/1 or a 2/2. It is another token that we can sacrifice to one of our other effects if we want. Then we search our library for an artifact card with mana value 0 or 1 and put it onto the battlefield. And I think that's the part that a lot of people are really excited about, is we're going to go get our Mana Crypt or our Soul Ring out of our library and put it directly into play. I don't know. I mean, if you play this early, like I was thinking, if you play this turn 1, you have a colorless land on turn 1, which isn't great in most decks. It's not great in this deck. We want black mana on turn 1 probably. The second ability isn't going to be good in most decks unless you're playing an artifact deck. If you play this turn 1, it's going to be, you're not going to be able to use that second ability, right? You play your second land on your second turn, and then you're not going to have enough mana to play that second ability and create the token unless you played a mana rock, like a Soul Ring, on your first turn. So likely that ability won't get used much. And then on your third turn, you're going to go get your Mana Crypt or your Soul Ring. I mean, that's okay. And then later in the game, if you play this, it doesn't really seem very good at all. So I don't know if people are really buzzing about this card or not. I don't think it's fantastic. It works in this deck because it's an enchantment that's going to go to our graveyard, right? We're going to play it. Doesn't matter if any of that other stuff is just freebies, right? Because essentially it's going to get to the third step and it's going to sacrifice itself and go to our graveyard so that we can exile it. So I thought, I saw that card around the exact same time I was making this deck. So I thought it's an interesting fit. It works. Why not? You guys get a bonus this time. I have Mannichi and Aphemia, both deck lists are in the description. You guys can check them out. You guys can build them and play them if you want. Again, I don't know how many people are actually wanting to build these decks and play them, and how many people are voting for these commanders because they want to see, hey, let's see what he can do with this guy. He looks like he's really bad, right? And again, Aphemia looked like one that was really bad. I was like, oh man, black enchantments, what are you going to do with that? And it actually wasn't that difficult. Like, there's lots of cheap enchantments that come into play, do some work for you. You sacrifice them, then they go to the graveyard. You get extra value out of them. It's really a pretty easy build around. I actually didn't have much trouble at all putting this deck together. And then, of course, the poll for the next one, the next Underwhelming Commanders video is in the description. So make sure you vote and make sure you drop me a line about the commanders that you want to see in the next poll, right? We all know how this works by now, I assume. So that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.